The music pulsed through the old warehouse like a living heartbeat, a rhythmic symphony of rebellion and youth. Jake Martinez stood near the industrial-sized windows, surveying the crowd of at least 200 people packed into the abandoned space just outside the city limits. His best friend Miguel had spent weeks scouting this location, a forgotten industrial relic that promised the perfect underground party. It was supposed to be legendary. Jake's fingers traced the edge of his vintage leather jacket, a gift from his grandfather that now bore the dust and excitement of the night. He knew the risks. Every person here understood the delicate dance they were performing. A massive party that could either become an epic memory or a complete disaster. The warehouse wasn't just a venue. It was a statement. In the past month, Jake and his crew had transformed a dilapidated space into something magical. Strings of industrial lights hung from exposed beams, casting a warm golden glow that softened the rough concrete walls. Massive speakers, borrowed and borrowed again, created a sound system that would make professional clubs jealous. The bar, if you could call it that, was actually a series of repurposed metal workbenches, now covered in carefully arranged bottles and improvised cocktail stations. Most of the attendees were college students and young professionals, people desperate for something real in a world of carefully curated social media moments. They weren't just here for a party. They were here to feel alive. Little did Jake know that Karen Anderson, the neighborhood watch coordinator, was already making her move. From her meticulously maintained Tudor-style home 3 blocks away, Karen had been watching. Her binoculars, a Christmas gift from her retired police officer husband, were trained on the warehouse's entrance. She heard the distant bass, noticed the increasing traffic of young people, and decided tonight was the night she would take action. Her fingers, adorned with a modest gold wedding ring, trembled slightly as she dialed the non-emergency police number. "I want to report a massive, unauthorized gathering," she said, her voice a mixture of righteous indignation and barely concealed excitement. The dispatcher listened patiently, taking down the details. Inside the warehouse, Jake was oblivious. He watched as his friend Miguel worked the DJ booth, transforming the industrial space into a pulsing cathedral of sound and light. People danced, laughed, and lived in a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. The irony was perfect. Jake had actually gone out of his way to minimize potential issues. They had private security to prevent any real trouble, a medical station with 2 trained first responders, and a strict no-driving policy with free ride-sharing for anyone who might have had too much to drink. But Karen didn't know any of that. To her, this was a potential threat to the neighborhood's pristine reputation. A disruption, a problem that needed solving. As the police cruisers began to quietly roll into the area, their lights off, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Jake had no idea that the night was about to take a turn he could never have predicted. The first police cruiser rolled up silently, its tires crunching on the gravel outside the warehouse. Inside, the music continued to pulse, completely unaware of the impending interruption. Jake's head of security, a burly ex-Marine named Derek, was the first to notice something was different. "Jake," Derek's voice cut through the music, calm but urgent. "We've got official visitors." In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. Miguel killed the music with a quick motion, and a collective breath seemed to hold itself in suspension. 2 officers approached the main entrance, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like surgical instruments. Jake stepped forward, his heart racing, but his demeanor calm. He prepared for this possibility, knowing full well the legal gray area they were operating in. The warehouse was technically abandoned, and they had verbal permission from a property management company that seemed more interested in collecting a hefty cash envelope than enforcing strict regulations. Officer Martinez, no relation to Jake, and her partner, Officer Reynolds, entered the space. Their initial scan was methodical, professional. Jake could see the surprise register on their faces. This wasn't the wild, destructive party they'd been expecting. The medical station was fully operational, with 2 paramedics monitoring a small area. The security team was professional, wearing matching shirts and using discreet communication devices. The bar had strict wristband protocols, ensuring no underage drinking. Clean water stations were strategically placed, and the venue was immaculately maintained. "Who's in charge here?" Officer Martinez asked, her voice firm but not hostile. Jake stepped forward, hands visible, posture open. "That would be me, Jake Martinez. We've taken every precaution to ensure everyone's safety tonight." What happened next was nothing like anyone, especially Karen, had anticipated. Officer Reynolds began to inspect the venue more closely. He checked the medical station, spoke briefly with the first responders, and observed the security protocols. Officer Martinez reviewed the event's safety documentation that Jake had prepared, complete with liability waivers, emergency protocols, and staff certifications. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her living room, phone clutched tightly, waiting for the inevitable report of chaos and destruction. She had imagined police vehicles with lights blazing, teenagers being handcuffed, the warehouse being shut down in a dramatic display of law enforcement. Instead, something entirely different was unfolding. "This is actually impressive," Officer Martinez said, a hint of genuine surprise in her voice. "We've responded to dozens of warehouse events in this area, but none with this level of organization." Jake remained respectful but confident. He explained their community-focused approach, how the event was raising money for local youth programs, how they were providing a safe alternative to more dangerous underground parties, and how every single attendee had been vetted and prepared. Officer Reynolds found the donation box for the local teen counseling center, filled with cash and checks. The officers exchanged a look. This was not the typical scenario they were accustomed to handling. "We'll need to see your documentation," Officer Martinez said, but her tone had shifted from suspicious to professional curiosity. Little did Jake know that Karen was about to receive the shock of her life. Karen Anderson's phone rang precisely 27 minutes after she had made her initial complaint to the police. Her husband, retired Detective Robert Anderson, watched with a mixture of amusement and anticipation as she answered. "Mrs. Anderson?" The voice was professional, slightly familiar. "This is Officer Martinez from the City Police Department." Karen's grip tightened on the phone. She had expected a report of shutdown and arrests, perhaps even praise for her vigilant neighborhood watch efforts. What she heard instead made her world tilt on its axis. "I wanted to personally thank you for bringing the event at the old Thompson warehouse to our attention," Officer Martinez continued. "However, I think you'll be interested to know that this wasn't the typical unauthorized gathering you might have imagined." Robert raised an eyebrow, watching his wife's face transform through a series of rapid expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked remarkably like embarrassment. The officer continued, detailing how the event was actually a meticulously organized community fundraiser. She explained the comprehensive safety measures, the youth support programs, and the professional approach of the event organizers. Each detail was like another nail in the coffin of Karen's initial assumptions. Back at the warehouse, Jake was wrapping up his conversation with the officers. They had not only refrained from shutting down the event, but had actually taken business cards from the organizers, expressing interest in the community outreach programs. "We could use more events like this," Officer Reynolds said, genuinely impressed. "These kids are doing something positive." The party slowly came back to life, the music returning at a more moderate volume. The energy had changed. There was a sense of vindication, a proving that young people could organize something meaningful and responsible. Miguel, Jake's best friend and DJ, leaned in close. "Did that just happen?" he whispered. "Did we actually need a police blessing?" Jake's smile was tempered with a mix of relief and quiet pride. They had worked for months to create an event that challenged stereotypes about young people and underground parties. Every detail had been carefully considered, from the safety protocols to the community impact. At her home, Karen Anderson felt the weight of her assumptions crashing down around her. Her husband, Robert, couldn't help but chuckle. A career in law enforcement had taught him that assumptions were often the most dangerous part of any situation. "Perhaps," Robert said gently, "not everything is as it first appears." Karen's face burned with a mixture of embarrassment and grudging respect. She had been so certain, so ready to be a neighborhood hero, shutting down what she'd imagined was a dangerous gathering. Instead, she had inadvertently drawn official attention to an event that was actually doing good. The phone call continued, with Officer Martinez providing details that systematically dismantled every preconception Karen had held. The event had medical staff, professional security, strict age verification, and was raising money for local youth counseling services. As the conversation drew to a close, Karen realized she was experiencing something rare, a moment that completely challenged her worldview. The young people she had been ready to condemn had instead created something remarkable. Outside, the warehouse continued to pulse with music and hope, a testament to what can happen when people are given a chance to prove themselves. The aftermath of the warehouse event rippled through the community in ways no one could have predicted. Local media caught wind of the story, a youth-led community fundraiser that had impressed local law enforcement, and suddenly, Jake and his team found themselves at the center of unexpected attention. 2 weeks after the event, Jake sat in the community center conference room surrounded by city officials, community leaders, and the very police officers who had investigated his party. The donation box from the warehouse had yielded over $15,000 for local youth counseling services, a sum that shocked even the most optimistic supporters. Karen Anderson sat in the back of the room, her presence both an act of curiosity and an unspoken apology. Her husband, Robert, had encouraged her to attend, suggesting that understanding was far more valuable than being right. "We've been approached by several community organizations," Jake explained, his presentation displaying images from the warehouse event. Professional photographs captured the careful organization, the diverse crowd, the medical station, the security team. "Our goal was never just to throw a party. It was to create a safe space that challenges perceptions about young people." The local youth services director, Dr. Alina Rodriguez, was particularly impressed. She had initially been skeptical when first hearing about the event, but was now one of its strongest advocates. What Jake and his team have done, she explained to the room, is demonstrate a model of community engagement that we've been struggling to achieve for years. Robert Anderson, seated next to his wife, leaned over and whispered, "This is exactly why we can't judge a book by its cover." Karen's cheeks flushed, part embarrassment, part emerging pride. The police department saw an opportunity. Officer Martinez proposed a collaborative program, using the warehouse event as a blueprint for engaging with youth, creating safe alternative spaces, and challenging traditional approaches to community safety. Jake's phone buzzed during a meeting. It was a message from Miguel, who was coordinating their next event. They were already planning to expand their model, looking at other abandoned spaces that could be transformed into community resources. What had started as a single warehouse party was becoming a movement. Karen watched as Jake fielded questions, observed his professionalism, his genuine commitment to community building. She remembered the night she had reached for her binoculars, ready to shut down what she assumed was a dangerous gathering. Now she understood how wrong she had been. During a break in the presentations, she found herself walking up to Jake. Her steps were hesitant, her pride a difficult thing to swallow. "I owe you an apology," Karen said, her voice soft but clear. "I completely misjudged what you were doing." Jake's response surprised her. There was no smugness, no hint of triumph, just a genuine smile and an understanding nod. "We're all learning," he said simply. "That's what community is about." As the meeting concluded, plans were already being discussed for future events, collaborative programs, and a new approach to youth engagement. The warehouse party had become something far more significant. A catalyst for change, a bridge between generations and preconceptions. Karen looked at her husband, who winked at her. Sometimes being wrong was the first step to being right. 6 months after the legendary warehouse party, the landscape of the community had transformed. What had begun as a single night of music and purpose had blossomed into a full-fledged youth empowerment initiative. The abandoned warehouse, now officially leased by Jake's newly formed nonprofit, became a beacon of hope. By day, it hosted job training programs, art workshops, and community classes. By night, it came alive with carefully curated events that brought together diverse groups of young people, local businesses, and community leaders. Karen Anderson had become an unexpected ally. Her experience had humbled her, transforming her from a rigid neighborhood washout into a passionate community bridge builder. She now sat on the nonprofit's advisory board, her decades of local knowledge proving invaluable in navigating community dynamics. During the organization's first anniversary celebration, Jake stood beside Miguel, looking out over a crowd that represented everything they had dreamed of creating. The warehouse, once a symbol of urban decay, now buzzed with life, possibility, and hope. "Remember that night?" Miguel asked, a knowing smile playing on his lips. Jake laughed. "How could I forget? The night we almost got shut down and ended up changing everything." The journey hadn't been without challenges. It faced skepticism, bureaucratic hurdles, and moments of doubt. But each obstacle had only strengthened their resolve. The police department had become a partner, not an adversary. Local businesses sponsored their programs. Young people who had once felt marginalized now had a place to belong. Robert Anderson, now a mentor to many of the young volunteers, watched the celebration with pride. His wife Karen stood nearby, discussing future program ideas with community leaders. The transformation was complete, not just of a building, but of perspectives. Dr. Alina Rodriguez took the stage, presenting the impact report. The numbers were staggering. Their programs had helped reduce youth unemployment in the area by 22%. Counseling services had expanded. Local businesses were hiring graduates of their job training programs. What had started as a single party had become a movement. Jake caught Karen's eye across the room. There was a moment of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd come. The woman who had once tried to shut down his party was now one of his strongest supporters. As the evening wound down, Jake reflected on the power of a single moment. One night, one decision to create something meaningful. One choice to challenge assumptions. The warehouse doors stood open, a metaphor for the possibilities they'd unlocked. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, but inside, a community had found its heartbeat. Miguel approached with 2 glasses of sparkling water, a testament to their commitment to creating safe, inclusive spaces. To changing the narrative, he toasted. Jake raised his glass. To second chances. In the background, the first notes of music began to play, a reminder of where their journey had started. But this was no longer just a party. This was a community. This was home.